majority of this is multiple choice. There's only 2 free response. I have them at the end. One of them is calculator. So you're going to get to use Desmos. But we are going to have to do some simplification so that you can pick A, B, C, D for your answer. So find dy dx, that's just your derivative. You can also write y prime, that's a little shorter. Multiplying your fractions. You multiply the numerators, multiply the denominators. So that will give you 2/12, which would be 1/6. Then you subtract 1. So 2/3 minus 1, negative 1/3. You guys are good with the fractions. All right, now I'm going to write this off to the side. There's nothing wrong with a good old margin problem, just writing it off to the side. I'm going to write it as negative 5 x to the what power? Negative 2. I just wrote that off to the side. That's just my thoughts. That's my thoughts on paper. That's all that is. Now, when you do your power rule, multiply these together. It's going to be positive 10 x to the negative 3. And I went through the test. I made mine. This is the test with different numbers in it. Okay, you know that's what I do. I'm going to show you how they simplified it down. Where would this x need to go since we have a negative exponent? The denominator. Now, I would write it as a cube root, but they left it like this. So that's how you're going to see it on the test. Again, at that point, like once you do the problem, you're just kind of matching your answer to A, B, C, or D. Like you're just picking which one matches what you got. And then how would you rewrite this one? It would be plus what? Yeah, 10 over x to the third. So that's how that one's going to look. Cool. Use the table. I love table problems. Every time you see a table problem, you want to be like, yes, no math. All your numbers are right there. You don't have to do any of the like tedious algebra or simplifying things. All right. So looking at this, what rule are we using? Product rule. Okay. So this parenthesis is the first thing. And then this parenthesis is the second thing. So we're going to find f prime of x, and then we're going to plug in 2. I usually write it separately like that. Like I write f prime x, and then I write f prime 2. I strongly recommend getting in that habit because if you equal those two things to each other, that's what's called a linkage error. Did we have this conversation in here? Maybe we did. Okay. You're linking together two things that aren't the same. This is the derivative. This is the derivative specifically at 2. So if you just started on 2 separate lines, you won't make a linkage error. That's my 2 cents for that. All right. So how does product rule start? Yeah, the first thing. So it's 3g of x minus 9. So just the first thing. Times derivative of the second. 2 is a constant, so that's gone. Derivative of h is h prime. Like, please don't overthink that. You don't have a function h, you just write it as h prime. Plus, then what comes next? Yeah, the second thing times derivative of the first. Now, the 9 is going to go away. Derivative of 3g is 3g prime. Again, the 3 is just there. Coefficients are simply there. They're just there. I don't have a better explanation. Now we're going to kind of like scavenger hunt, find all of our numbers. We're plugging in 2. G of 2, what is that? It's 4. Now you're going to have to actually work this out, though, because it's multiple choice. So 4 times 3 is 12. Minus 9 is 3. That whole first part is 3. Then we want h prime of 2. Negative 1, good. Somebody say it back there. Plus h of 2. Negative 3, plus 2, negative 1, good. And then g prime of 2 is 5 times 3 is 15. So again, we are going to have to actually work that out because it's not going to show up like that in multiple choice. If you boil that all down, what's your like single numeric answer? Negative 18. Good job. Made it through. That one looked scary. Is it intimidating? All right, instantaneous rate of change. What on earth does that mean?
Derivative.
It's derivative. It's like the entire first half of this class. All right, what rule do you need for this guy? Yep, quotient rule. And again, I'm going to write f prime equals, and then I'm going to write f prime 2 equals. It doesn't matter so much for multiple choice because it's multiple choice, but for free response, that'll prevent a linkage error. So, all right, how does it start? If you get the beginning, you will likely get the rest of it. Yep, denominator. So x plus 5, derivative of the numerator is 3x squared. Minus the numerator. Derivative of the denominator is 1. I am going to write it At this point, I will release you from writing it. Remember how I said when you're first learning it, you should always do, and if you want to still, that's fine. But if you're like, nah, I really don't want to, I think we've gotten to that point where you can drop that. Okay. Over denominator squared. And then we're just going to plug in 2, see what we get. 2 plus 5 is 7. This will be what, 12? I'm going to just work it out. You tell me if I make a mistake. We'll just check each other. 2 cubed is 8, minus 4 is 4. And then down here, 7 squared is 49. So 7 times 12 is 84. 84 minus 4 is 80. So 80 49ths, which is a great answer. Don't discriminate. I don't like this answer. Wasn't there one on your quiz that was practically exactly like that?
I don't know. Like 29 or
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Good memory. I knew it was something like that. There was a 49, wasn't there? Or was 29? I don't remember. All right. What rule do we need for this guy? Chain rule. You're gonna bring the 9 down, drop it to an 8. The guts stays the same. So just literally recopy the stuff in the parentheses. And then you're going to chain on. Now, I always put a dot. I call it chain rule dot so that people like know it's a chain rule. Obviously, in multiple choice, they're not going to have a dot. All right. But I think you'd be able to pick the answer. And then what are we chaining on? That derivative of that, which would be 3x squared plus 4. Now, in multiple choice land, it might be written the other way around. Do you get what I'm saying? But like, I think at that point, you could pick the answer. Okay. All right, for f of x equals h minus g, find the derivative using this graph. So f prime equals, do not overthink this. What's the derivative of h? H prime minus g prime. You don't have actual functions. Like, so derivative of h is h prime, derivative of g is g prime. Derivative means slope. That's why these graphs are lines. You can't do a slope of a curve unless you have like an actual function to use. But we're going to go find the slopes. So what's the slope of line H? Like regular old algebra 1, just count the little boxes. How much up and then how much over? Up 2 over 1. So that's 2 minus g prime. So the slope of g, this is going to be negative. So it's going to be negative something here. Negative a half. Is that what it is? I'm trying to find what I call pretty points. I'm getting negative 2/5. Negative 2/5. The answer is not going to look like that in multiple choice. So we're going to have to get a common denominator. Good. How many fifths is 2? Yeah. So this is 10/5. It'll actually be plus 2/5. So 12/5. So derivative means slope. That's the takeaway from that. Derivative means slope. I call my algebra 1 student, to my algebra 1 students, I call these pretty points. Just find your pretty points. This is, I literally do this in algebra 1. And then I draw the little triangle in for them. But it's no different for you guys. Same thing, same concept. Slope hasn't changed. All right, here we're going to get into our trig, exponential, logarithmic. What rule is this one? It is chain. There's 3 links. What's the first link? The square. Good. You bring that down, it drops to a 1. Everything else stays the same. Again, in multiple choice, the 1 is not going to be there, but I think you should write it because it confuses everybody if it goes away. All right, now we're going to do derivative of secant. If you want to write off to the side, secant tangent of the stuff that's there. So don't forget the 5x. You actually won't be able to forget because it's multiple choice. And then last link in your chain is a 5. I am going to rewrite this one so that we can talk about how it simplifies because, again, the answer choice won't look like it. Believe it or not, this is all one thing. You would do 2 times 5, which is 10. And you have secant times secant, which would come out to secant squared. So because you had 2 of them there, it's secant squared 5x and then tangent 5x.
Why do you not do anything with patterns?
No, that's just the stuff that's inside of the function. That stays the same. It's exactly like if you had, hold on, let me get a sticky note. Good question. Thank you everyone for staying quiet while I clarify this, because that is a good question. You know how if you have, I'll use sine because everyone likes that better. If you have sine of x times sine of x, it becomes sine squared of x, but it's still just x. Like the x didn't change. This one just so happened to be 5x, but it's just that stuff. The guts of it doesn't change. All right, almost done with this page. So what does this mean? Yeah, prime, second derivative. So let's get our first derivative, and then we'll get the second derivative. So it's e to the power g of x. It's e to stuff. So what rule is that? That is chain rule. Derivative of e is itself. Hey, looks like you just wrote the problem. Sure did. And then you chain on the derivative of g, which is g prime. The first derivative, that's easy. That's not bad. Okay. But now when you go to do the derivative of that, what rule have you got? Well, there's another chain rule, and it just became a product rule because you have two separate things. So just heads up, it's going to get really long. Product rule is the first thing times derivative of the second. What do you think that is? If we do the derivative of this. Yeah, good. Second derivative. Perfect. If it's already prime, then the derivative is prime prime. So first derivative of the second plus the second thing times derivative of the first, which is this. So it's itself. And then chain on, good. What gets chained on? G prime. Now, I went and wrote this down because I went through the test to make sure I wrote my answers the way they show up on their multiple choice. And again, I'm the messenger. I'm just letting you know they factored this. This is your first term. You have a plus sign, and then this is the second term. What do these two things share in common? What have they both got? E to the stuff, right? That happens with E because it's itself, right? We're going to factor that out. Now, if you can look at the choices and like when you have choices there, you won't need to necessarily write it again. But I'm going to, I don't have choices here, so I'm going to show you what it looks like. So if you factor out that e to the g of x, I'm actually just going to cover it up. What's left? I'm doing greatest common factor. If I take these out, g prime prime plus, I want to see if anyone gets this. Why is it squared? There's two of them. Do you see how there's g prime times g prime? It's g prime squared. Again, if you didn't like that, congratulations, you're a normal person. You just have to find enough problems that you do like. But I wanted to show it to you. And, I believe that a lot of you will make it through it because I believe in you and you're all intelligent and capable people. Or do you know how, like, if you can make it halfway through a problem, sometimes you can be like, oh, the answer's B. Like, do you get what I'm saying? Like, if you make it halfway through, you can pick an answer choice. This has mostly multiple choice. All right, we'll do this page and then we'll do a break. Or actually, we'll go through 15 and then we'll do our halfway break because there's only one problem in this section on the other side. All right, what rule is this guy? Chain rule. How many links in the chain? There's actually 3. What's the first one? E is the first one, then the fourth power, and then cotangent. So there's 3 links in the chain. So E is itself. So basically it just looks like you rewrote the problem. And then you're going to do the fourth power. So the 4 comes down, drops to a 3. And then I know this is the hard one because you have to know the derivative of cotangent. But again, when you have choices, the choices there will help you out. First of all, because it's a it'll be negative there. So, that'll help you narrow down choices as well. Does anyone think they remember it? Derivative of cotangent? It is cosecant squared. Again, when you have choices there, they'll help you. Believe it or not, that's all one thing. I'm not going to rewrite it, but when you go to pick your multiple choice, they're probably going to put the negative out front, and they'll probably put the 4 out front as well because it's a coefficient. Do you get what I'm saying? Like they'll just reorder it, but it's the same thing. This is your token inverse one. This means the same thing as arc. Do you know what I'm saying? Like this is arc sine of e to the 7x. Threw one on there. It's 1 over something. Does anyone remember any part of it? I'll take anything at all. Just throwing it out there, see what you got. There's a square root. I love it. And that helps you narrow down your choices. Did tangent, arctangent have a square root? No, so that helps you narrow it down. It is square root of, now the rule says 1 minus x squared, but it's that stuff squared. So it'll be e to the 14x. When you do a power to a power, you multiply. So 7x times 2 is 14x. Not done. There's actually one other thing. What's going to get chained on? Yeah, e to the 7x, because that's itself. And then you chain on a 7. All right. We're going to find f prime of 0. So we're going to find f prime of x, and then we're going to plug in 0. So what is your derivative of tangent? If you want to write pissed off to the side, it's positive. Cover up the one you've got. Secant squared. The 2 is just there. All right. So it is 2 secant squared plus, and then what's your derivative of 9e to the x? 9e to the x. The 9 is just there. E to the 9x would be a chain rule, but just a coefficient's not going to change that. All right, plugging in 0. We have to do secant of 0. It's really 0 pi. Think of it as 0 pi. Where is 0 pi on the unit circle?
Right.
To the right? What's that point?
0, 1.
Pull yourselves together. What point is 1, 0. Thank you. I'm going to have to draw it. Hold on a second. It's right here. 1, 0. Which one of those is secant? It's the 1. You flipped the x value, but 1 over 1 is 1. 1 squared is also 1 times 2 is 2. Good. Plus, we got there. E to the 0 is 1 times 9 is 9. And so your answer is 11. Slope of a tangent line. That means derivative. So we're going to do the derivative, and then we're going to plug in 4. That's what most of this is. Find a derivative, plug in a number. Find a derivative, plug in a number. What rule is it? Quotient. You're going to start with the denominator. Derivative of e to the negative 3x is e to the negative 3x. Isn't there a chain rule? So you're going to chain on negative 3. Good. Minus the numerator. What's the derivative of the denominator? 1. So if you don't want to write that, that's okay. Over denominator squared. And then we're going to plug in 4 and see what we end up with. So let's see. 4 minus 2 is 2. Times negative 3 will be negative 6. E to the what? Negative 12. Good. Minus e to the negative 12. We're going to deal with that in a second. Over, what do we have in the denominator? 4. Good. Now we're going to put that together. It's not going to look like that. Again, multiple choice means you have to go all the way to the bitter end. Negative 6 of something. I know it's e to the negative 12th. Just negative 6 of something and then minus another 1. So good. Thank you. It's negative 7 of that. And then we're just going to fix the negative exponent. So where would it go since it's negative? Yeah, on the bottom. So it'll look like that. Again, pep talk. If you get at least like halfway through the problem, you can start narrowing down choices. Multiple choice is very helpful like that. That one just looks like the alphabet on your paper, basically. All right, ln. Does anyone remember the derivative of ln? Yeah, rational. One. Now it says 1 over x, but it's going to be 1 over like that stuff. All right. So it'll be 1 over 9 minus 2x. And then we're gonna chain on, so actually I'm gonna put it in the numerator, or you could put a little dot and put it off to the side, that's personal preference. What's the derivative of the insides? -2. And then we're gonna plug in -2. See, I would say the one before that, number 11 was really hard, but number 12 wasn't too bad. Just remember, they're not all gonna be super difficult. Like, it's a collection of easy, medium, and difficult problems. So you have to just not let the difficult ones frighten you to the point where you mess up the easy ones, right? So if you plug in -2 here, what is that gonna be? 9 plus 4, 13. I'm actually, I don't remember if I ever showed you this notation before, but that's really easy. I can explain it in 1 second. What do you think this means? I can't remember if I brought it up or not. Which derivative? It's a second derivative. It's a prime. That's what that means. You're not squaring anything. It just means the second derivative. If there were 3's, there would be a third derivative, all right? So first derivative. E is itself. And then you're going to chain on the derivative of x to the 4th, 4x to the 3rd. So now when we do the second derivative, what rule did it just turn into? It's a product rule, good. I'm writing y prime because I don't feel like writing the dy dx with the 2's in it. It means the exact same thing. All right, so product rule. First thing times derivative of the second. Plus the second thing times derivative of the first, which would be itself times, good job, perfect. Now again, I went through the test and I'm gonna write all my answers the same way they did. I find this really foolish though. I am gonna complain about how they wrote this. Do you see how this is the first term and this is the second term? They factor it, they do a GCF, but they don't take the whole GCF. So I guess it's not a GCF, it's just a CF. I mean, that's stupid. Why bother doing it if you're not going to do the whole thing? What do these share in common? Yet all they take out is the e to the x to the 4th. But do you see how that's a 12 and 4 times 4 is 16? Like you could also take 4, like, and some x's. I don't know. Anyway, that's all they factored out. So if you take out the e, the x to the 4th, you'd be left with 12x squared plus 16x to the 6th. Where did I get an x to the 6th from? Yeah, like 3 plus 3 is 6 is what happened there. All right, couple more and I'll give you your break. All right, what rule is this one? Quotient. So it is the denominator, derivative of the numerator, minus numerator, and then good, 1 over x over the denominator squared. I have a brief conversation about ln x squared for a second. This happened during the COVID years, so I'm going to just chalk it up to that and give everybody a break. You cannot do this. I don't know where this came from. I mean, they're trying to turn it into trig. You know, with trig, we put the squared in the middle. This is not a thing. Please never do this. This does not mean anything. That's just a jumble of letters with a 2 in it. Do you get what I'm saying? Okay, that's not a thing. Don't do that. Now the only thing they do to simplify this one down is the x is going to cancel in this. And so it'll be, I'm going to put this 3 out front, 3 ln x minus 3 over ln x squared. Because those x's are just going to cancel out. And I know we're at the halfway point, but I'm going to do the next problem because it ends that section and then we'll do our halfway break. You guys are hanging in there. Nice job. I'm trying to get us through this so we can like play a game and do something more fun. Oh, and this is an easy one. This will be a good place to end for our break. Not every problem is going to be super difficult. You have to look through and find the easy ones. This one's not bad at all. This one is not bad at all. What is your derivative of 9x? 9. Derivative of 5, nothing. Plus derivative of ln, 1 over x. And then just plug in 2, you get 9.5. I looked through on the test, that one comes out to a whole number, so I'm not worried about the decimal or fraction. On your test, it's a whole number, okay? But yeah, they're not all going to be super hard. You got to find the easy ones. You got to look for them. So these are your inverses. Oftentimes they'll call the inverse G, which is nice because it's nicer to write G rather than F with the little -1. You can write either one though, so that's kind of personal preference. But when you get an inverse question, you're going to make your two tables. And again, they called it G, so I wrote G. I don't like the F inverse prime, like the -1 and the prime in there together, like looks weird to me. So I like it when they call it a different letter, but it's up to you, personal preference, whatever you want to put there. So then you kind of just scavenger hunt this until you get your answer. Whatever lands here is your answer. And it says find G prime of 3. So where do I want to put 3? In X for which one? G, because we want G prime of 3. So 3 goes there. Now you want to come over here and put 3. And then look at your table. Do you see how F3 is right here? That means the input is 1, so you can put that in. And the derivative is 7. So your answer is 1/7. Did you use this number or this number? No. Oftentimes with inverse problems, they give you more information than you need because they're trying to trick you into using that. But that's it, easy peasy. 1/7 is your answer. That's it.
So it's always the X of the.
Yes, you reciprocate this number. Yeah, good. Yeah, so on the F column, we found 3. So the input is 1 and the derivative is 7. So I just went and filled those in. And then you just take this number and reciprocate it. And that's your answer. Okay. I'm about ready to do it again. So we're going to make columns for F and G. Yeah, if you missed that or you were like, hey, I'm not quite good, I'm going to do another one. Now it says G of 1 equals 2. See that there? So in the G column, I'm going to put 1, 2. So good, that means in the F chart, it's going to be 2, 1. Now you need a derivative. This is going to be the easiest derivative you do all day. What is your derivative for this function? 6x squared. Now this is the part that gets everybody. Do you plug in the 2 or do you plug in the 1? You plug in the 2. Do you see how that's the input over here for F? So if you plug in 2, you're going to get 24. And so your answer is 1/24. I guarantee you, like I would bet my life savings, one of the wrong answers is going to be if you plugged in the 1 instead of the 2. So just be really, really careful. All right, equation. What 2 things do you need to write an equation? Point and a slope. They gave us the whole point. Wasn't that nice of them? We just need the slope. Slope comes from derivative. All right, what rule is this one? It is product, good, and chain rule, good. You guys are gonna eat this test up. It's just rule. Same thing over and over. Deciding which rule you need is half the battle, and you guys got both of them like right away, so it's good. All right, how does product rule start? First thing, times derivative of the second. That's where the chain rule comes in. The 2 is gonna come down. It drops to a 1. I'm gonna write the 1. If you don't want to, that's fine. It's just when it's a 1, it throws everybody off because it's gone. The guts stays the same. And then you're going to chain on the derivative of the stuff in parentheses, which is -3. Good, perfect. So that's first times derivative of the second plus the second thing times derivative of the first, which you catch a break there. Derivative of 2x is just 2. And what are we going to plug in to this whole mess here? 1, good. So even though that's a mess, 1 is a pretty easy number to deal with. This part would just be 2. Let's see here. 1 minus 3. It's -2 times 2 is -4 times -3 is 12. Good. plus, all right, let's see, that would be 1 minus 3 is negative 2, squared is 4, times 2 is 8. So what is that? 24 plus 8 is 32. We had to do some math there. This is your point. That's your slope. We're doing this in Algebra 1 right now as well. It'll be y minus 8 equals 32 x minus 1. As a heads up, they do distribute this and get it in y equals mx plus b form. Do you want me to go through those steps, or do you feel like you would be okay there? You got that? Or do you want me to work it out? I'll just work it out. It's fine. Y minus 8 equals 32x minus 32. And then you would plus over the 8. These are the two things that you guys did last time. All right. So to save you some time for this one, if you plug in 0, you're going to get 0 over 0. So L'Hopital's rule says if you get 0 over 0 or infinity over infinity, you can take the derivatives. It's not a quotient rule. You're doing the derivatives separately. So what is your derivative of ln? Yeah. Now it's 1 over the stuff. 1 over x is correct. You guys all said what I was asking for. It's the stuff. And then we're going to chain on the derivative of said stuff, which you can write off to the side, or you can just put it in the numerator. It would be 5e to the x. Denominator is trig, but it's the easiest one. Derivative of sine is cosine. The cos get the negatives. And now when we plug in 0, it's going to work. Sometimes it doesn't. You have to do it a second time, but this one's going to work. E to the 0 is 1, so that'll just be 5. It's multiple choice, so we don't. But you're correct. On free response, do you remember in my video? You have to do the limit of the numerator, show that it's 0. Do the limit of the denominator, show that it's 0. Mention that the functions are differentiable, and then you're allowed to do the rule. But if it's multiple choice, just A, B, C, or D, so you just got to get the answer. All right, what would this be over? Did anyone do that while I was talking? That would be 1, right? Oh, and then what's cosine of 0? 1. So the whole thing is 5. Now these, you do not want to do it as a limit. This is the reason why I taught you that whole x plus h definition thing. You have to notice the pattern. What you're going to do is decide what function it is, take a derivative, and then plug in whatever value they tell you to plug in. Do not overthink. Just glance at it and let your instinct kick in. The function is sine. That's all it is. So the derivative of sine is cosine. And then we're plugging in pi. Good job. Where's pi on the unit circle? I'll act it out for you.
Left.
The left. Little nervous, but let's try again. Shot at redemption. What's that point?
Negative 1, 0.
Good job. Negative 1, 0. Cosine is the x part, so negative 1. 0 would be one of the other wrong choices, I guarantee you. And then probably 1 would be one of the other wrong choices. Okay, so just be really careful. These are your free response. This one is non-calculator. This one's calculator. So just as a heads up, not yet, but when we get to this last one, I'm going to have you bring up Desmos so you guys can practice type. You got to practice before you do it. All right, but that's the only screen I want you on is Desmos while we're going through. This one's non-calculator. Write an equation. Oh, that means we need
Point.
a point and a slope. What's the x value for our point? 0. Now, hold on. It does tell you that f of 0 is 4, but this is not 4. I want you to read carefully. Why is it 7 over 4? Read. Why is it 7 over 4? Because that's correct. Good job. Do you see how it's 7 over f of x? Okay, they're trying to trick. Was that hard though? No, but you have to calm down and read. Okay. Slope comes from derivative. Okay. So when you do this derivative, it's going to be a quotient rule. How does quotient rule start? Denominator. Derivative of the numerator. Derivative of 7 is 0, which is actually really nice because that's all gone. minus the numerator derivative of the denominator over denominator squared. And I'm going to just scribble all that out because it's 0, so it's gone. Now, don't put an equal sign. That's a linkage error. Just don't put anything. We're now going to plug in 0. So in the numerator, we're going to have -7. I'm going to leave that for a second. Just hold off on that. We'll come back to that. F of 0 squared. Well, what is F of 0? They told it to you. 4. So 4 squared, 16. I'm coming back to this. We have to do F prime of 0. Do you see how this is F prime right here? We're going to plug in 0. What is cosine of 0? 1. Here, I'm going to write this out. F prime of 0. That's 1 minus 0 minus 6. So that's going to come out to be -5. Good job. So what is our slope? 35/16. Great answer. Don't discriminate. And then you just have your point and your slope, put it all together and write your equation. And it's free response, so you do not need to do anything to that. B, find F prime prime of 3. Well, this is F prime. So we just need to take a derivative to get F prime prime. So what's your derivative of cosine? Negative sine. And then what rule have we got there? You have to chain on a 2. Good. And then minus 3x squared, and then 6 is gone. It's free response. Do not simplify anything, please. It will not be simplified on my answer key. Leave it alone. All you have to do is recopy this and plug in 3. That's literally it. That's the answer. Do not do anything to that. I don't know what sine of 6 is anyway. You can only do unit circle stuff without a calculator, like pi over 3 and stuff like that. Like, I don't know what sine of 6 is.
Just put 2 with the parentheses.
3, fine. Yep. Now, the only thing with that is you have to be really careful with your parentheses, because if you don't close the parenthesis that you open, then it's wrong. So just be careful. But yeah. All right, g of x equals that lovely thing. Find g prime of 1. All right, so we're going to find g prime of x. We're going to plug in 1. Write them separately. That'll prevent linkage errors. What rule is that? What rule are we going to have for that one? Chain. 3 links in the chain. F, and then square root, and then the stuff inside. So it's going to be f prime of all of that times, what's the derivative of square root? I trained you to memorize it. 1 over 2 square root. I told you you would do well to just memorize that one. It's way easier. 1 over 2 square root. And then the last link in your chain is going to be what? Yeah, the derivative of the inside, which is 8x. Now, here's the only caveat to you can just plug in 1. You still have to evaluate, bless you. Oh, cubed. Thank you. I'm so sorry. If I left off that 3, guess what? The whole thing's wrong. The whole thing. They are mean. They don't do partial credit. Thank you. Crisis averted. All right. So here's the one caveat to plugging in your number. You can't leave it f prime of something. That's not a number. It has to be numerical. So we are going to have to evaluate this first part, but the rest of this we can all leave alone. Okay. So let's plug in 1. 1 to the 4th. 1 times 2 is 2 plus 7 is 9. Square root of 9. 3. Good job. We're going to do f prime of 3. Come back up here. This is f prime. All we're going to do is plug in 3. That's f prime. We want f prime of 3. So it is cosine of 6 minus 3 cubed minus 6. Leave it alone. You want f prime of 3? They gave you f prime. Just copy it and plug in 3. That's it. And then the rest of this, simplify like as much as you feel like. Because I think that comes out the same. That's square root of 9, or you can just write 3, or you can write 1/6. I mean, I guess simplifying that isn't really that big of a deal because it's not that hard. But I mean, we're plugging in 1. You could even write 1 cubed if you want to. That's just 1. I'm leaving that up to you. Just don't make an error. All right, last one on this, and we get to use our calculators. Yeah, go ahead. Did I mess something else up? I might have.
Why'd you write 3 instead of 1 and 3?
Oh, because that would have been wrong too. I'm so sorry. And then did I mess that up too? 6 is fine. Okay. Sorry. Numbers everywhere. I would have missed all of C. Do you see that? Like if I took this AP exam, I would get a 5, but I wouldn't get a perfect. Every year there's like 3 people that get a perfect. Like they literally get the whole test right. I'm like, how do you do that? I would mess something up because I'm a human. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. This first section. So when we plugged in 1, we got square root of 9, which was 3. So we want f prime of 3, and this is f prime right here. So I just kind of copied that and plugged in. Oh, I did want to plug in 3. Yeah, it is 3. Thank you. I'm sad that's on my video now. Let me say it again. Let me say it again. We're plugging in 1, right? When we plugged in 1 to this, we got 3. So I want to do f prime of 3. So I came up here and I plugged in 3 correctly the first time. And then I plugged in 1 to the other parts of this. I plugged in 1 in the first place. We plugged in 1, we got 3. So 3, do you get what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
what's a good grade? 3. All right. What does this mean? Inverse. So I'm going to make my tables. You don't like the table? I kind of like the tables because I just think you're filling it in. It is, yeah, I will grant you that. All right, we want g prime of 4. Where's 4 go? X, yeah, that's your input there. So, oh, hold on, you're super quick. That's cool. So it is 0. Why is it 0? Read the question. F of 0 is 4. It was given information. They tell you. What? Yep, it's part D. Still the same root question. Now we're going to do f prime of which number? The 0 or the 4? 0. F prime of 0. We already did it.
-5.
-5. They do that a lot as well. They'll throw in a part D where you actually already did part of it. It's kind of nice. And so what's your answer? Good. And just make sure you circle it or say this is my answer in some capacity. Because if you just leave tables there, they're not going to know which part is your answer. Now, I want this to go smoothly, but it is not an open invitation to just be on whatever screen you want. I just want you to practice typing this. Watching me type it benefits you not at all. So please bring up Desmos, okay? I want you to practice typing these. And I think you'll like this question because you basically just do the question and then type it in the calculator. Do the question, type it in the calculator. So it should look like this. You want to do Desmos graphing. In Algebra 1. I cannot tell you how happy I am you guys get this on your test.
Me too.
Because what we're about to do is so easy on here and inordinately difficult on the TI calculators. You guys are playing on easy mode. My class, I know, like I'm so happy for you guys. You don't know because you didn't have to do it the other way and understand like how much better it is. All right, are we all there? We're good. Oh, and this is a table 1. That's fantastic. Okay, so they gave us a table. They gave us this hot mess. That's okay because you get a calculator. All right. Estimate g prime of 2. Here's what's tricky about that. You don't use the g prime. Derivative means slope. You just want to slope these numbers. If you sloped these numbers, you would actually be doing a second derivative. Do you get what I'm saying? Okay, so if we want to estimate at 2, you use the numbers around 2. You use the numbers on either side of 2. So do not be too proud to write out the points. Don't be too proud. Okay. And then we're going to do regular old algebra 1 slope. So what would that be? 5 plus 1 over 3 minus 1. And what do you do to that? Nothing. If you wrote 6 over 2 without writing that, wrong. They won't give it to you because it says show the work that leads to your answer. They want to see that. No, okay. I kind of like it, but we're allowed to be different. All right, a is this function. Find a prime of 1. You're going to find a prime of x. You're going to plug in 1 on the calculator. You're going to love this. This is great. You're going to write it out and then type it in. All right, so what is a prime? Don't overthink this. F prime of x, good. Plus g prime of x. There wasn't a product rule. There wasn't a quotient rule. There wasn't a chain rule. There wasn't even a function. That's literally, you get a point for that. All right, so now we're going to plug in 1. F prime of 1. Do you see how this is F? Okay, here's where you guys get to practice typing it in. You're going to go to your Desmos. And in the first box, you're going to type that function. I learned this yesterday because I was practicing doing this. They make you put parentheses around the ln of x. I'm actually not really sure why that is, but I learned that. So put parentheses around that. Also, the default setting is radians. So don't change any of your settings. The default setting is radians and you want to be in radians. So don't change anything. ln, just type ln. Yeah. But put it in parentheses. I learned that yesterday. It won't do it if you don't put parentheses. I'm like, why isn't this working? That's the graph of that function. Yeah, well, you don't need that part, so don't look at that. All right, come down here and we want to do f prime. It's just an apostrophe. Just type an apostrophe. And what did we want to plug in? 1. Now hold on. Or did everyone get that? Negative 4.056. Okay, now hold on a second. Hold on a second. Not done. Okay, hold on. That's this part. We want to add g prime. Look at your table. What is g prime of 1? 2. So on your calculator, you need to put, hold on, plus 2. This is your answer. How many decimal points do you need? 3, and it is the first 3 that you see. It's called truncating, the first 3 that you see. Or if you're just feeling very anxious, you can type all of the decimal points, but the first 3 that you see. I don't know how to explain this to you, but if you write negative 2.1, wrong, with 0 partial credit. I don't know if you guys got coached for that because you weren't in real pre-calc, you were in like the half credit, 3 decimal points. Okay, good. They will mark your, they will give you nothing. I don't know how to explain that to you. Oh, so it's going to be negative 2.056. Go ahead. An apostrophe is the prime mark. All right, so look at this one. We're going to find b prime and we're going to plug in 3. So what rule is this one? Product. The first thing, derivative of the second, plus the second, derivative of the first. You get a point for that. You just write it out, you get a point. And then you type in your calculator and you get another point. Now, I can't have both my calculator and this paper up there at the same time. So anyone watching the video, I can't switch back and forth. So you're going to have to just, bear with me here. So we're going to come over here. Clear out what was in the second box, but leave this. You don't have to retype that. All right, so we are going to put f of, what number are we plugging in? 3. So f of 3 times, now we want g prime of 3. Can you look on your little table there? What is g prime of 3? 7, good. Plus g of 3. Look at your little table. What's g of 3? 5. And then we want f prime of 3. Now, the reason that's like that is because I just made up this problem and I didn't check what it was going to come out to ahead of time. So that's why it's 206,101,060.567. But just write it down and go with it. On your test, it won't be like that. Okay, I promise. Yeah, I'm sorry. I just made up a problem and shoved some numbers in it and I didn't know what it was gonna come out to. So that's what it came out to. It won't be that on your test, okay? But isn't that nice? You just write this out, type it in. All right, last one. What rule do we need for this one? Quotient rule. I'm not gonna say the quotient rule to you. That's annoying to like have it read to you, but everybody just write it. But you get a point for that, just knowing the quotient rule and writing it out. I am gonna emphasize that. I know I keep saying that. I get people that don't write that. They'll just skip that and do the part with plugging in the 2. Have you seen on every single problem, I write like f prime of x and then f prime of whatever number, like I write it, you have to write them both. They won't give it to you unless you write them both. So do that, get a point. And then what are we plugging in? 2? So we're gonna go back to our calculator. Leave the f of x in there, you don't need to change that. And let's do this, g of 2. Look at your little table, what's g of 2? Okay, 4. And then we want f prime of 2. Oops, not 32. Minus f of 2. And then g prime of 2. Look at your table and find g prime of 2. -3, good. And then the way you get the fraction, highlight the whole thing and hit your fraction bar. And we want it over g of 2 squared. So what was g of 2 again? 4 squared is 16. And then that's your answer. Again, 3 decimal points. And I apologize, it's weird. I just like made up numbers, so it came out weird. So how do you feel about the calculator questions?
How can you know?
Those aren't bad, right? Yeah.